Hey, good Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome to the Volquest Mailbag Podcast. I'm Eric Kane with Brent Hubbs, Rob Lewis, and Austin Price. As always, a thank you to Exterior Home Solutions for being the presenting sponsor of this show. A lot of rain going on right now. We've had some severe weather in the area. If you have a need to repair anything from your home, siding, roofing, garage, windows, whatever it can be, or if you just want to upgrade your home, renovate your home, contact Exterior Home Solutions today. They've been local and trusted here for this area since 1999. A free estimate, 865-524-5888, or online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. Let's jump into the questions. Smokey Gray says, is there any chance that Dante Thornton takes snaps away from either Brew McCoy or Chris Brazel this season?
Sure. I mean, I think the question becomes, to jump in there, AP, I think the question becomes, how many do they play? How many receivers do they end up playing? What kind of camp does Thornton have? How does he go? Where's Brew McCoy? Can he play unlimited snaps? Do they manage him differently in certain games? I think all those things factor in there. But absolutely, I think Dante Thornton has had a good offseason and has put himself in a position to be a contributor. What that exactly looks like, that's why those receivers better not take a day off on the practice field in fall camp, because the competition's legit.
Yeah, I mean, you what did you hear on Wednesday was – you had Josh Heupel praising, Chaz Nimrod and the work he's done all offseason. So, I mean, you're right. Like, this wide receiver room is going to be a really nice, healthy competition. Could he? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, like, it's going to be a production meets playing time type of thing. If you're not producing in practice, you're probably not going to get a ton of reps in the game. So you better be producing between now and Chattanooga.
It's just so funny to think back how shallow they were at that position at points in times last year because of injuries and everything. There was one point in time where Chaz Nimrod was playing on the outside, Squirrel White was in the slot, and Squirrel White was tapping his helmet to come out. And I think I turned to UAP or maybe Grant or I don't know who it was, but I said, he's tapping his helmet. Who's going to come in for him? Like, there's nobody else because Chaz Nimrod's already out there. And Chaz Nimrod was practicing in the slot, first day of camp. Of course, there's some versatility there. Market Square Streaker has an impossible question to ask, but AP, you maybe remember some of this. How many of those recruits were at the 2022 Tennessee-Bama game that are now at Tennessee? Do you remember any of the big-time visitors were at that 2022 Alabama game?
I don't. I mean, honestly, like the last, 6 to 8 weeks, there's been a few in this class that, were, underclassmen pretty hard at that point, and they were at that game and ended up on the field with everybody else because, it was the fun thing to do. So, there's been a few that ended up on that field that night that are now wearing orange. And, I can't think of them off the top of my head, but I know for a fact there's been a couple of recruits in the last 6 to 8 weeks that have talked about it.
Another question here from the poster. Rod Clark's interview the other day has me thinking this upcoming season could be similar to last year. What should my expectations be, Rob, for this upcoming basketball season?
Final Four bust, baby.
I'm not ready to throw hardcore expectations, but I do agree that getting to look at having been in the gym with him a couple times now, and seeing the new guys. I would I don't mean to cop out, but I would say you're just kind of a vanilla when you expect to compete for an SEC championship. I think that's very fair, and along with that, top 1, 2, 3, or 3 seed. But yeah, there's not a Dalton Connect on this roster, and I don't think we'll ever see that again. But I think there's a lot of firepower. I'd like to see more than a couple of workouts in July before I, say that they're going to make the Elite Eight or Final Four or whatnot. But there's a lot of pieces to work with. I think Coach likes this team, and I've said it and written it. But I think defensively in the post, I think they've upgraded probably pretty significantly. I think he really likes what Okpara and Milicic bring down there with their length and their toughness. And I'm not taking shots at Jonas and Tobey, but they're just different. They're quicker twitch. They're longer, and they've not had a guy like Milicic. I'm not saying he's Dirk Nowitzki, but he's 6'10" and he can legit step out and shoot it and go inside and bang. So it should be a good year. Plenty of optimism.
You won't say he's Dirk Nowitzki, but he is Drazen Petrovic. Rob, this next question from Austin_Price. What will the pressure be like? Will it be similar to when Tiger had won those 3 in 2000 and was going for the Tiger Slam at the 01 Masters when Tennessee football wins the national title. And you'll have baseball, football, and basketball will be going for the Triple Crown in March.
Oh, it'll be immense. It will be immense. I will say this. I mean,
look at he's like, God, I'm so negative. I can't even.
But throw the big trophy out. I mean, just act like Tennessee made the College World Series. It's not unthinkable that they make the College World Series, college football playoff, and Final Four. I mean, that's not, you probably get some pretty good odds on a parlay, but it's not just, outside the realm of possibility.
Pretty good time to be alive if you're a Vol fan right now. With the reality being that, I mean, look, if you're going to be a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament in the basketball world, I mean, absolutely, you're a Final Four contender. It's all about draw. It's all about matchups and that type of thing. But you're putting yourself into that possibility. And we know with football, things go well to start the year. In particular for football, they can put themselves right in contention for that playoff spot. Again, pretty good time to be alive to be a Vol fan after walking aimlessly through the wilderness for a long period of time. Not that has nothing to do with negativity from me. I'm just stating that fact. Walking through the wilderness a lot for a long period of time.
WH Vol asked, and he's not the only one. There were several different questions. I'm not listing every single one, but wanted to know about the increase of scholarships, for football specifically, up to 105. How many recruits will Tennessee sign this recruiting cycle? Will that affect this cycle, Austin?
I mean, I don't think it really super affects anything. I mean, I think I think that there's going to be some team that tries to go with 105 like legit players. I'm sure there will be, but I think there's going to be some that are like, the NIL portion of this is going to limit some things. I mean, like, you're only going to have so much money to go around. You had 20 dudes that are going to still expect to get something. That continues to add to the number. The number that, people have been saying 15 million, 18 million, all these different things. You hear at different schools about what their football number is. Add 20 guys to that. Even if those 20 are making, $50,000 to $100,000, like that adds up in a hurry. And so I think, what you're going to see here is you're going to see some of the guys that, were fringe walk-on type guys. They're going to end up being scholarship guys now. Now, again, do I think Tennessee's going to have 85 and then 20 kind of walk-on types? No, I think the number will be north of 85 legit guys. But at the same time, I don't think it's just going to be 105 scholarship guys, because I think people will be trying to move it out and about a lot anyway. But as far as this year's class, no, I think you're just going to try to sign as many as you can that you feel like can help you. And whether that number's, 22, 23, 24, you're going to go to the portal for X amount anyways. That's what I said the other day on the podcast. I know I'm getting long-winded here, or not on the podcast, but on the board. Like, I think looking at like team rankings is really hard because everybody's different. Because, some people may go, okay, I'm going to go sign 16 guys, and then I'm going to go use the rest of my spots for the portal. Well, the portal's not equated into your recruiting rankings. So, like, I think it's hard to kind of like really look at that the same as you could 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting because I think initially what you're going to do is you're going to take care of the walk-ons who you think can help you on special teams.
Like Matthew Solansky, people like that.
Right, yeah, and even your backup deep snapper, right, and some guys who are contributors on special teams. Most programs around the country probably have 5 guys that a coach would dearly love to put on scholarship that are in their walk-on program. 5 to 7 guys that are contributors or they're legit key backups that you would like to have on scholarship. Then after that, I think it's almost going to be like an NFL practice squad type deal. I mean, you're gonna just bring in a bunch of guys. Once you got to get rid of your walk-ons that you have, then you're going to bring in some guys. Hey, we'll take a flyer on the guy and see. And if it doesn't work, then we'll ask the guy to head on elsewhere. You weren't good enough for this level, but we'll give you a shot here, and we'll take a chance, whether it's an in-state guy or whatever the case may be. And I think most of it will be in-state guys.
Perfect example of that is the kid from Camden High School who ran a 4.3. You take a flyer on a kid like that, right, Hubbard? Now that you can kind of
I would make sense
and see what happens. I mean, if worst case scenario, he ends up going back to MTSU, Chattanooga, UT Martin or something like that after the fact. I mean, that's what I do.
Yeah, and I think you'll do that with a lot of in-state guys because I think it's going to be easier to do that with in-state guys than it is to go, recruit a, quote, preferred walk-on from a Florida, from the state of Florida or somewhere else. Well, in-state makes a lot more sense that way, which is most of your walk-on guys anyway.
And you got to remember too, like that number's your cap. So like it's 105 for football, it's 34 for baseball, meaning scholarship. Take baseball for example, scholarship and walk-ons, you can't exceed 34. Whereas in the fall, you have 50 guys scrimmaging every single day. So I guess my question, and we don't know the answer to this yet, Hubs, but could the I don't know how it would work for football, but for like baseball, could the NCAA say, okay, schools, you get 35 positions, you can go up to 34 scholarships, but 34 is the cutoff. In the fall, you can bring in as many as 45. But when you return back from winter break, you got to cut that sucker down to 34, and that is your team. I'm intrigued to see if any of that's going to be allowed for, like an old-fashioned, did you make the team, did you not make the team? Because, again, 34 for, like, the fall period is not a lot for baseball.
No, but, I mean, think about football. Football's got 130 out here for fall camp.
Yep.
They're going to roll 130 guys out there as their squad size, and they're going to lose 25 practice players. 25 scout team guys are going to be gone. That's also going to have an effect on high school recruiting and guys at the lower level, which is a different topic. But no, if you allow them to carry some more guys who are not in that scholarship deal, I think you're going to have a number. And maybe baseball is different. Maybe that number is set by the time you start your season. Yeah. So maybe you can do what you're saying in the fall. Football is not going to go to fall camp with more than 105 and whittle it down from there. You're going to be at 105, and that's where you're going to be.
We'll move on now to Steven. I think we can all agree that Tennessee recruiting is the best they've had under Josh Heupel and company right now. With that being said, what do you think they need to do what do you think they need to do aside from winning, if anything, to take that next level to be like Georgia or Ohio State?
Win. That's the difference between I'm not trying to be a smart aleck, but one trophy case in Athens, Georgia's got a bunch of the big trophies in it. Tennessee's is a crystal ball that they quit giving out a decade ago.
If you had to say, aside from winning, though, is there anything else they could do differently that would make that big of an impact?
I'm with Hubbard 1,000%, and I'm not trying to be a smart aleck. I'm serious. Go back and look at who all's been in the playoffs multiple times, and look at the top 5 in the recruiting rankings. Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, multiple playoff appearances, and Ohio State. Same. The outlier is Michigan to me. If you look at I know there's been a lot written. Sure, they had a lot of NFL guys, but they're the one champ that was not wasn't loaded with top 3 recruiting classes for 3 or 4 years previous.
And I would say this. I think Tennessee is winning a decent amount of battles against Georgia and Alabama and schools head up now. You're not going to win them all, but I think Tennessee's winning some of those battles because they've won on the field, because their culture is good. They present a good product. That they do a nice job on visits. Their NIL plan has been a solid, legit. There's nothing fly by night with their NIL plan and the way that they go about business there. So I don't know that there is one thing. I don't think, well, they're behind with their players lounge, or they don't have enough uniform combinations, or legitimately, I think the separator between those teams is winning. I think it's, I think that's where you're at, is just continue to be in the playoff, get into the playoff waters and be there. Then you become an even cooler school. The first question out of the gate in the podcast here was how many people were at the Alabama game? I don't know how many people were there specifically, but I can promise you this: that win has carried real weight for Tennessee and assembling this recruiting class.
Oh yeah,
without a doubt, and that's a win. They didn't do anything different. They won the game in a great environment, which is what happens when you win big ball games. It's always a great environment.
You cannot generate that. That's organic.
Yeah, that's right.
And it happens at Ohio State. It happens between the hedges and big game atmosphere. You can have all the, night on Rocky Top or night in Sanford Stadium, but there is no substitute for what that stadium was like, what game day is like here, or at the other big time places.
What's it going to take for an offensive pass interference to be called on a Hail Mary? One of these days, a coach is going to tell a couple of his players to go down there and basically tackle a few of the defenders to give room for the wide receiver to go up and catch it. Will the official have the guts to call offensive pass interference on a play like that?
I don't think they'll throw a flag on offensive or defensive pass interference unless you're just tackling the receiver in a wide open space. But there's no wide open space in a Hail Mary. It's a mass humanity of people. I mean, aren't you telling your kid to grab, tug, pull, everything you can possibly do to prevent something like that from happening? I mean, have we ever seen an interference call on a Hail Mary play?
I don't believe so.
It's
just a cluster, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they'll throw one. I don't think unless it's just an isolation deal where for some reason, it's a Hail Mary in a non-traditional sense. But I mean, if you're talking about having 7 or 8 guys down there trying to jump up and bat a ball, I don't think they're calling a penalty there ever.
ATX Vol 19 says, I know no one cares because it's not a priority right now, but with the Anderson training facility, when is that construction supposed to be completed?
Well, they're doing work there.
They started doing more work on that than Lindsey Nelson after the baseball season.
Yeah, they are doing some work there. They put in some interior walls and making some progress there. I don't have a timeline. I don't have a date. We'll have a facilities update from Danny White coming up here on Friday. Or we hope to. I don't know if he's going to have a specific hard date, but they're making some movement. I think that thing's gotten a couple of different redesigns. I think it's changed. Some of the priorities in that deal has changed a little bit. So there's some movement there and some progress there. It's particularly the last 2 or 3 months compared to what we saw for a year or so when nothing happened. So I don't know. A year from now, maybe they're getting pretty close a year from now. Did
they get your renderings for the media lounge that's going to be put in there for all the time we waste over there?
No, I'm good. I'm good with where I don't want to have to walk. I don't want to have to walk down the street and then back up the hill to get from the interview room back to the media lounge. So I'll take my media lounge where it's at right now in a hallway and be pretty comfortable with it. That's why nobody goes to the media room and sports information, because you got to work down the street and in and then back up. So.
Steve 113434 said mods over the weekend said that it's happened plenty of times where they commit, they do a video for a commitment, it gets recorded, and the kid goes elsewhere. So what specific events would trigger a 50-cent GIF? Guessing it can't be the recording of the commit video if they've ended up elsewhere plenty of times. Austin Price.
When I feel really, really good about it. But in some instances, I'm not going to do it. I mean, there's been plenty I didn't do that I knew were locks. I just try to protect the kid. Just every situation's different.
Well, and I jumped into that thread and answered that thread because I didn't want, because they used the phrase burned. A kid burned us. Okay. And I don't view that as getting burned. Sometimes you're doing that to make it easier on the kid whenever he makes it a decision, easier on us, quite frankly. So, because you're not trying to get a hold of a kid 30 seconds after he's announced at his high school, he's bombarded by classmates for pictures and everything else. So I think you do those with the understanding that anything can happen with some of that stuff. I just don't view it as a kid burning a media person when you do that. And that's why I jumped in there and wanted to, I didn't want to get a kid to beat up on kids like they're doing the media role.
I don't think anybody has ever done one intentionally trying to quote, burn any of us. I think in that moment, the kid was coming. Right. And then things change, especially in this era. And it's not really happened this cycle. It's been more the previous cycle when I filmed like 47 of them. They didn't run.
I filmed several of you in a prospect that never ran.
But I mean, I don't think in that moment any of them, ever. I mean, like the running back from Arkansas last year. Like, I mean, in that moment he was coming, and then he gets back around 5,000 Razorbacks, and they just make it harder for him to leave the state and this and that, and so.
Another question here from Steve. Does Volquest have insight into subscriber data by state? What other states besides Tennessee have the biggest number of users? There's a nice little pocket of Vol fans up here in Dayton, Ohio.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we can look at the geography of things, and we can see where people are viewing stuff from and people are reading stuff from. I mean, you know, it's all over the world. We got them in England. We got them in Australia. We got them. We're worldwide, baby. Hopefully to go bigger and more.
Just so you know, Hubs has a satellite. He can tell exactly where you're viewing from at all times.
That's exactly right. All of y'all are on my Live 360. I can tell exactly what you're doing right now.
I think that first question was actually asked by NJ Vols fan. So
if Hubbard turns that laptop around, there's a big world map on the wall with little pinpoints of light.
Let's go to Vulcan. He's got a couple. Having done the opponent previews, what teams in the SEC would you like to trade any individual position groups with if you had a magic wand? Rob Lewis, since you did the previews, why don't you answer that one?
I would feel like I have a pretty good handle on the SEC teams Tennessee does play. I probably don't know, a lot more than, anybody else about the guy, the one other than, the highlights about, LSU's offensive line, Texas's skill guys. Man, an easy one would be, and I think Tennessee's secondary is going to be better, but I think, Georgia and Alabama's got to hit on some transfers in their secondary, but, they're bringing back, Malachi Starks has played an absolute ton of football. I would say, maybe their secondaries perhaps, but, man, I don't know of anybody that I would just think is head and shoulders above, what Tennessee has. Do you? I mean, any of you guys? LSU's, with those bookend tackles. I mean, they look like they're going to be strong in the offensive line. Again,
anybody strong at running back? I can't think of anybody that's just super strong at running back.
Georgia's typically the strongest at running back, but I can't think of.
Well, they got the Florida transfer. The Florida transfer.
Yeah,
and they're that they don't have anybody coming back that's a big first team all SEC type guy. Well, Etienne is first team preseason all SEC guy.
I'm with you, Rob. Though typically I know Nick Saban's not there, but a Nick Saban coach team, Kirby Smart coach team, your secondary is going to be pretty good. So more times than not, you could pick one of those two teams if you want to maybe switch out a secondary.
Well, just just and how funny is it? We're talking about those teams. Both of them have a Malachi coming back that's played a ton of football with Starks, and what's Alabama's guy Moore Malachi Moore. But both those guys are they're anchors. I mean, but they've got both of those teams have some questions at corners, but they've got the answers are likely guys that were 5 stars that just hadn't played yet.
And I know we got to move on, but like the tackles, Rob, for LSU, I would take in a heartbeat because they're going to be day 1, day 2 draft picks. I know Lance Hurd's got tremendous upside and John Campbell's an experienced guy, but the tackles, I don't know about their interior though. But Tennessee returns essentially 3 starting offensive linemen. Lance Hurd's going to be really, really good. You can count him as a 4th. I wouldn't trade Tennessee's offensive line right now.
Yeah, if you're just talking about offensive skill sets as a whole, Texas brings back yours. They got Bond transferred in at wide receiver, Isaiah Bond. The running back Baxter, has been productive. But I don't. It's not like I would think they're head and shoulders above Tennessee. I wouldn't trade Tennessee's skill set. I guess is what I'm saying for what you've seen at Texas.
Hubs, I jumped in on you like 4 times there.
Well, I think when you look at it, it's about experience, not about talent.
Yeah.
And I think it's a credit to where Josh Heupel's put this roster. But if you're talking about swapping secondaries, not necessarily because somebody is more talented or more athletic, it's just what Rob's talking about. Those guys have played so much football, and I think when you look at the same thing with some of the receivers, listen, we're all. I'm pretty bullish on Chris Brazzell. He's not played in the SEC, right? Dante Thornton looks the part. We'll see what kind of step he makes. So I think if you're looking at trading, it's probably more for some people with experience into some spots where Tennessee doesn't have a lot of experience. I think this secondary, as Tim Banks said, they can pick them up and put them down. They can run better, but they haven't logged any snaps, whereas, Georgia's replacing some corners, but they're corners who are 2 or 3 years into their system and they've played. They played at different points in time, whereas Tennessee's, their most experienced corner in this system is Ricky Gibson. who's not played a lot of football,
Yep.
and so that would be the biggest difference for me.
Two more here from Vulcan before we hit a reset. Who, in your opinion, are the best 7 football players on the offensive line, regardless of position? Who wants to answer that one?
Again, I mean, I think you're qualifying. Are you saying the most talented, the most gifted? Are you throwing experience into that? Where are you saying that? I mean, from a look standpoint,
how you want to.
I mean, I think from a look standpoint, there's probably not anybody better walking through the complex right now than Jeremiah's Hurd. He's not past set, so I can't put him in. I don't know if you put him in the best 7, but if you lined him up and said, hey, which one looks the best, he's clearly one of your best 7 guys. But I mean, you take Cooper's experience and you take Cooper's ability. He's going to be there. Hurd's going to be there. Spraggins has played a ton. And then you probably starting to get into a little bit more of talent versus experience and where some guys are that way. I'll say this without getting, going through a whole 7, because I don't know how realistic that is. The one guy that people keep talking about over there in terms of long-term future is Jesse Perry. There's a lot of people, Austin, that are really high on the potential of Jesse Perry helping this offensive line somewhere at some point in time in his Tennessee career, sooner rather than probably all of us thought that he would in terms of where his development was.
Yeah, he's a little twitchier than they all thought. And then, I think there's versatility. I think most people just had him pegged as tackle, but I think he could do just a little bit of anything, including center.
All right, we got plenty more questions to get into, but first, let's get a word from our friends over at Exterior Home Solutions.
Severe weather can strike at any time in East Tennessee, and Mother Nature can do severe damage to the first and most important line of defense that you and your family have against Mother Nature, and that is your roof. Whenever she strikes, make sure that you call the people that I call. Make sure you trust the people that I trust, and that's my friends at Exterior Home Solutions, because they're more than friends, they're truly family.
You can call Exterior Home Solutions today, and they'll give you a free estimate at 865-524-5888, or visit them online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. Let's go to Brandon_SV. A long time ago, Austin said that he was going to write a story with interviews from Taj Boyd. Since I've given up on that, we all talk about him some. I want to say Austin said that he still comes to some games at this point in the UT history. What are some other highlights of Taj Boyd?
Well, I think that, for Taj, he does still come, once a year, but it was going to put him in a weird spot. So he didn't want to do it because he's a Clemson guy now. And so if you're sitting here talking about, I love Tennessee so much, I still go to games even though I didn't end up there thanks to Lane Kiffin. I just think it was going to put him in a tough spot. So that's why I didn't get written.
It only took Troy Aikman 4 decades to declare that he should have went to Tennessee. Right. So, I mean, what's interesting with Taj is, we'll never know what if he'd come here, what does that look like? What is the track for Tennessee football from that standpoint? And, and this happens with new coaches. I mean, they never, Lane and his staff never gave Taj Boyd a chance to ever come here, much the same way. They didn't give, guy's name escapes me from that was at Washington.
Right.
Michael Penix. They didn't give Michael Penix a chance to come to Tennessee. That staff didn't. So it just happens in coaching turnover. That's just part of it.
Shellray 14 wants to know, can the Vols ever make the state of Florida a serious factor in recruiting? Seems like teams like Alabama get the best players from Florida. Also, will the Vols ever have 2? Okay, so answer that one first. Florida recruiting, Austin.
There's been very few that have come out of the old Sunshine State Hubber that have panned out. There's been a couple, but Tennessee's missed more in the state of
way more.
Way
more.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at Florida, I mean, unless you're in a you got a tie to somebody or you're in an elite, you're just one. I mean, if Tennessee were to go win back-to-back national titles, would some Florida kids maybe have more interest in Tennessee? Perhaps. But I mean, there's so many schools down there to pick from. I mean, the red flag or the concern with me with Florida is always, okay, why is Florida and Florida State not interested in the kid? Okay. I mean, and if they are, and he's looking to leave the state, why is he looking to leave the state? Is there, does he have family ties to the place that he's going to? I mean, what is the case there? I mean, again, there have been moments where Florida kids have done well at Tennessee, but there's been a lot of misses on Florida kids. I think you're better served Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia, some of those places, and spot recruit Florida. I don't think you blanket recruit Florida.
I just don't think, like you said, I think unless you're elite, like Ohio State or Alabama, like Alabama going in to get Derrick Henry or, something of that nature. I don't think you're going to have a pipeline. I mean, I think if you're, one of the top 5 programs for 4 or 5 years, you can go there and cherry pick.
Second part of the question, will the Vols ever have 2 1,000-yard rushers or receivers in the same season under Josh Heupel? Seems like he did that at UCF with less talent, albeit a weaker conference. I don't think Tennessee will ever have 2 1,000-yard rushers, but maybe
I can see receivers. I wouldn't rule that out.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would completely rule out the rusher deal. I mean, what happens if you only played 2 running backs last year instead of 3? Does Dylan Sampson hit 1,000 yards? Or Jabari Small hit 1,000 yards? Boy, it'd be really close. I mean, I think what did Sampson finish with? Right at 700? 690 something, I think, in that ballpark. It'd be close. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility, but if you're going to play 3 running backs, you're not going to hit 2,000-yard rushers. That's not going to happen. And look, don't compare UCF stats that way. I mean, you can look at it and say, well, Josh Heupel's been successful running the ball everywhere he's been. But, I mean, that's a league where every game was 56-48 when they were playing in that league. There was no defense being played there. It was whoever had the ball last for a lot of those teams.
If Tennessee gets quarterback play the way they got with Hendon, I would tell you that the 2 rushers is far less likely to happen. Mm-hmm. If you get quarterback play like Joe, which, again, wasn't terrible, but it wasn't what Hendon was doing, then, it's much more doable.
Yeah, and if Cedric had stayed healthy in 22, would he and Jalen Hyatt both been 1,000-yard receivers?
Certainly, yeah, maybe.
Certainly a possibility.
Yeah, and would Jalen have had the year that he had Cedric stayed healthy?
Because Hendon was obviously, that Cedric was.
Pittsburgh game, he threw to him 80% of the time.
Yeah, he did.
Dylan Sampson finished with 604 yards. If you combined Sampson and Jabari Small's 475, then you're over 1,000. But then again, Jalen Wright just had 1,013 yards. He had a really good year.
I think it's hard. I think it's hard. Yeah. Out of the realm, maybe not. But I think receivers are easier. It's easier to do because of the big play stuff than it is. I mean, you talk about Jalen Wright and get to 1,000 yards. I mean, look how many 50-plus yard runs he had to get there. Mm-hmm. So the receivers would make more sense than running backs, probably.
Dalval 5 wants to know, now the talking season is over, who in the league won talking season and interests you a little bit more than you thought they would 6 months ago, Rob?
I really don't have a winner there. I mean,
I think the newbies, Texas and Oklahoma, obviously probably won talking season, right?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, what's
I didn't know they declared a winner of talking season.
Well, here's my thing.
Everybody's talking about the new guys, right?
Well, they were going to talk about them anyway. I mean, Texas is going to be talked about because they're the second best team in the league. Okay, I mean, so that's where that is at. I mean, I don't think there's more interest in Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State because of the talking season. I don't think Billy Napier's done anything in talking season to create any more discussion or that type of thing. There's so much talk out there now anyway, and so much stuff done out there anyway. It doesn't take long to get to let's play a game and see what everybody looks like type deal.
I mean, it's gotten worse, but I think everything is just so canned and formulaic. I mean, very rarely is there anything of interest or substance in the offseason. I mean, it's more, it should be about the games, but more than ever, that is what it's about.
Well, even Eli Drinkowitz was reserved and didn't say anything crazy at SEC Media Day, he's probably one of the more lively quotes who's are capable of saying anything at any point in time. And he was pretty subdued during the talking season point. So again, I'm not a huge fan of media days because I just don't think there's a whole lot of substance to come out of it anyway. But yeah, I mean, the most discussion that's going to take place here is about Texas and Oklahoma joining the league, because they're two traditional schools joining the Southeastern Conference, and that's going to generate most of the preseason talk.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talk and anticipation to see what Ole Miss is going to be this year, but I don't think that's because of talking season. I think it's because of what they
transfer
did in the
season.
Yeah. I think it's because of what the roster looks like and the schedule looks like.
Yeah. Blue Sky Vol says it seems that Coach Heupel likes to get a great quarterback in the boat and then build his class around him on the offensive side of the football. Assuming that's the case, is there a similar strategy or to recruiting on the defensive side of the football? Maybe getting a really disruptive edge rusher or Mike linebacker.
Yeah, you don't want to add Leos. I mean, you want to add that. They've been so good at adding pieces like James Pierce and Josh Josephs and Caleb Herring and Jordan Ross, that you want to add, guys like Marion Dye this year. So I think, and Dye's a little bit different than the other guys, just a fraction, but, still a disruptive player. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're looking for, guys that can get to the quarterback on the opposite side of the ball.
Yeah, and I think the two sides of the ball are different, right? I mean, I think receivers are paying attention to who the quarterback's going to be. I think an offensive tackle has got more interest in who the quarterback is going to be. I don't know that, defensive linemen go, wow, they've got a 5-star inside linebacker. I think I want to go play, with him, because that's going to suddenly make my game totally different because that guy is there. It's just the quarterback position carries so much more weight on offense than any one single position carries on the defensive side of the ball when you're building a class.
Yep.
Hard Hat Vol asks, I know we're just getting started with fall practice, but tell us about the depth that we have that you can count on in a game on the offensive line. Besides Carrick, Lampley, Dane Davis, Spraggins, Mays, Hurd, Campbell, those top 7, who could you rely on? And I want to couple this. I don't know who it was in the Monday Night Chat, but they said, say you need a 4th offensive tackle, like Dane Davis would be your 3rd. Who would that 4th be? And right now, I don't know. I mean, who would you guys say? I know Larry Johnson's had a great offseason, but would it be Larry Johnson? I don't know.
Well, you get the next 30 days. Figure it out. And
yeah, I mean, at right tackle, it's probably Larry Johnson. At left tackle, I don't know, because Larry's not a swing guy. He's not going to play.
You get left tackle, you just slide
right
John Campbell back over. I think if Lance Hurd has to come out, John Campbell just goes to left. And I think
that's a good point.
Yeah, I think that's the case that way. And listen, I'm not trying to be mean, but if you're playing, Rob, if you're playing offensive lineman 9 and 10 on your roster, meaningful snaps, it's not going very well. I mean, you've had a really bad year. I mean, it's not good.
It's like the old Colts offensive coordinator Tom Moore said about practicing, giving Peyton's backup snaps. You can go look the quote up. It's a classic.
All right. Pine says, and there goes the light.
38 minutes. You got to look.
So you were wrong.
Took
you
the
were wrong.
over.
Hit the over.
Okay.
Pine says, Nico's legs are obviously a weapon. How many called runs a game do you expect for Nico?
Not a lot.
Yeah, I think I mean, I'm going to go with my opinion. Y'all run with this. I think it's going to be situational. Situational being point in time in a game, if you're trying to go win the football game, late in the football game, and also your opponent. I think both of those are going to factor in a decision on how many times you say this is a design quarterback keeper.
Yeah, I could be naive, but I think it's going to be high leverage situations, like really high leverage situations against Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma. I mean, big games. Second half, 3rd down and 3, big game. I don't think it'll be very common. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it'll be pretty rare.
And like last year in the Citrus Bowl, they had 2 design quarterback runs for touchdowns. The 3rd one was him improvising, but that was number 1. It was a one-off. It was one game. Number 2, it was a big game. I don't think we should see that one game and say, oh man, they're going to make Nico this huge part of the run game. I'm with you. I think it's going to be situational.
It better not run one against Chattanooga.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't call one there.
Did the speed option against Akron a couple years ago, and Hooker got drilled. I know they just put that on tape, but it's like, dude,
yeah.
And then if you run an option the correct way, your quarterbacks get drilled every play. So it's like, Why do you want to do that? Anyway, does this offense have enough playmakers? I think this offense has enough playmakers. You can always want more, but Rob, I think this offense has got plenty playmakers, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, we can argue that they're not all proven, but I mean, it's like Hubbard was saying. I mean, are you just talking about experience or talent? I mean, I think the guy that we probably think is the biggest playmaker on the whole damn field has started one game in his career.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they have playmakers. Those Brazel has to go prove it. I mean, Cam Seldon has to go prove it. Dante Thornton's got to prove it. Ethan Davis has to prove it. I mean, they've got potential to have playmakers, I think.
Megavol says, do you think Sims can be a pretty good recruiter, but just has to get some time under his belt to build those relationships like we saw from Pope and Ablin? Or will he not turn into that necessarily based on personality, etc.?
I mean, again, I think it just boils down to he got here kind of mid-cycle. And so you already had one running back committed. At that point, Tennessee wanted to go for the bigger back. And so Tennessee did go for the bigger back and did not get Shakaima's night because Tennessee's room in his mind is a little more deep than Ole Miss's is. And, they've pivoted to DeJuan Morris. We'll see if he ever gets to campus. He was, did not come last weekend. But did not go to Auburn either. Auburn tried to get him to come back down there as well. So he did not go down to the Plain. So, I think the jury's still out on Darrell Sims as a recruiter, just based off of, you don't think you can judge him off this cycle. Judge him on next cycle. He'll have had a full year.
You can't even. I mean, was anybody catching more flack from the hardcore recruiting fans than Aben, a year ago? And now he's ready to throw a parade for him after the transfer portal and the flip.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that either. I mean, I'm with you, Rob. I think ultimately Alec Ablin's next challenge is to, show he can recruit more than just a tight end. He did a nice job with the two kids they have currently committed in this class. Now, can he go and expand on that? Because you're only going to recruit 1 to 2 tight ends every year. They need him in that role to be a little bit more of a recruiter in other spots, like help Glenn with the linemen or whatever.
Well, and the judgment on recruiting is a year-by-year judgment. It's how you do that year. I mean, that's the bottom line. Lock them this year. If they don't land somebody, then they can't recruit next year. That's the history of recruiting. It always has been, and it always will be.
Rodney Garner's one bad class away from going from the greatest of all time to what have you done for me lately?
2 more from the poster that we'll end on. Anything on Jaden Harmon, linebacker commit for Alabama? I heard some rumblings, but haven't seen any confirmation on the VQ.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee has continued to recruit him until he makes it up for a visit. I think it's all preliminary type stuff. So, again, they've reached out. We'll see if he ever makes it to campus.
And the last one of the guys committed who are 3 stars, who do you see getting a bump up to a 4th star?
Oh, that's a great question. And I just don't know. Rankings are always a mystery to me. And so it's a thankless job for Charles Power and anybody that does them. But I don't know. That's a great question. There have been guys that I thought probably shouldn't be 4 stars that I thought should be 3 stars and vice versa. And, it's all opinion.
Yeah, and we'll see what somebody does first 3 or 4 games of their senior season here. I mean, nobody was pegging Jordan Ross to be a 5-star last August, and that's where he ended up. So I think we're to the point now where all the camp stuff is over. It's about what a guy does from a production standpoint when you see his film through the first 3 or 4 high school games, and we'll see if somebody makes a big leap based off of that. Because I think that's where your judgment is now. If you're Charles Power, you're looking at rankings. You've got game film to watch, and you're viewing it off the game film and not summer camp, stats or numbers or measurables and that type of thing. You're looking at actual production now on the field.
That's going to do it for this week's mailbag portion of the podcast. Appreciate you guys for sending in your questions as you do each and every single week. Got a lot going on right now at Volquest.com. We know of Tennessee's heater on the recruiting trail. Just keeps getting better and better. Got a couple of big announcements coming up to end the week and, of course, this weekend. So follow Matt Ray and, of course, Austin Price over at Volquest.com on the General's Quarters. Football camp is here. Got daily coverage, practice coverage, highlights, photo galleries. We got, press conferences, everything you could possibly want. But Tennessee football fall camp over at Volquest.com right now. And, of course, basketball and baseball notes as well. For Brent Hubbs, Rob Lewis, Austin Price, I'm Eric Kane. Thanks so much to you guys, and thanks so much to Exterior Home Solutions, 865-524-5888 for making this coverage possible. We'll see you next time here on the Volquest Podcast.